I knew something was wrong the second I heard the hiss because that wasn't the sound of food cooking, that was the sound of food dying. And when I turned around and saw a full stream of water blasting straight into my grill while some stranger stood there holding a hose like she was putting out a house fire, my brain just stalled out like an engine that forgot how to turn over. I remember blinking at the smoke then, at the soggy burgers, then at her, and the only thing I could think to say was, "Ma'am, are you serious right now?" She didn't even blink, just shrugged and said, "You should have stopped when I told you." Yeah, that happened. Now let me tell you how a quiet summer barbecue with my kids somehow turned into a court case, a city ordinance, and the most surreal lesson about patience I've ever learned in my life, because I swear to you, I didn't wake up that morning thinking I'd be standing in a park negotiating with a woman armed with garden equipment like she was the neighborhood sheriff. My name's Tyrone Lewis. I teach math at a public high school. Nothing glamorous, just chalk dust and teenagers who think calculators are personality traits. And that afternoon I'd promised my family burgers to celebrate the start of summer break. Nothing fancy, just charcoal, a public grill, and a couple hours where nobody had homework and nobody had alarms set for 6 in the morning. We got to the park early because those grills fill up fast. Sun was low. Air smelled like cut grass. My youngest was laughing on the swings. My wife was laying out buns on foil. And I was standing there feeling like life, for once, wasn't trying to test me. You know what I mean? Then she showed up. At first, she was just another passerby, middle-aged white lady in running shoes and that tight look some people wear like the world personally inconvenienced them. She walked past, caught a whiff of smoke, coughed loud enough to qualify as theater, waved her hand in front of her face like I'd lit a tire fire. And I figured that was the end of it, because most folks, if smoke bothers them in a park, they do this wild thing called walking in another direction. But she didn't. She disappeared behind the restroom building, and I thought maybe she was going to complain to a ranger or something, which would have been annoying but normal. What I didn't expect was the squeal of a spigot turning and the slap of rubber dragging across concrete, and when I looked up, she was marching back toward me, pulling this bright green hose like she was rolling out a red carpet to chaos. And before I could even ask what she was doing, she lifted the nozzle, aimed it right at my grill, and squeezed. Water exploded out, hit the coals, steam shot up like a geyser, ashes splattered onto the meat, and my dinner for 5 turned into a soggy gray mess in about 3 seconds flat. I just stared. Not mad yet, not yelling, just confused, because your brain doesn't immediately jump to someone intentionally destroyed my food as a first explanation. So I said it slow, pointed at the grill. "You just sprayed water on all of this." She nodded like she'd completed a chore. The smoke was blowing at me. I waited for the apology that never came. "It's ruined," I told her. She shrugged again. "I told you to stop grilling." I actually laughed a little because the sentence didn't make sense, like she'd skipped several chapters of a conversation we never had. "You told me I said." "Yes," she answered, arms folding. "You didn't listen." That's when it clicked that this wasn't about smoke. At all, smoke was just the excuse she picked off the shelf. This was about authority, about her deciding she got to regulate the air I breathed in the space I stood in. And right then I felt that spark in my chest, that heat, that says react, but right behind it came another voice, reminding me what reacting can cost a man who looks like me, especially when the other person looks like her. So I kept my tone even. "Ma'am, this is a public grill." She shot back. "Exactly. Public. I don't have to sit here choking." I said, "Then don't sit here." She leaned closer, eyes narrow. "Keep arguing." And she let it hang like a warning she didn't have to finish. Behind me, I could feel my kids watching quiet, in that way kids get when they sense something serious is happening, and I knew whatever I did next, they'd remember it maybe longer than I would. I could have grabbed the hose, could have yelled, could have stepped into her space and demanded she explain herself, but I've lived long enough to understand how fast a story flips depending on who's telling it. So instead, I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Grill, burgers, hose, her face. She smirked like I'd just confirmed something she already believed. "Go ahead," she said. "Call whoever you want." I nodded. "I will." Then I told my wife quietly, "Pack up." She looked at me, saw I was serious, and started folding things without a word. The kids didn't complain, which hurt more than if they had, because it meant they understood. The woman dropped the hose, turned, and walked off like she'd just enforced a law nobody else knew existed. She thought she'd won. What she didn't realize was I wasn't leaving defeated, I was leaving deliberate. Next morning, I went down to the city office, filed a report, asked them to preserve camera footage from the maintenance building pointed at the grill area. And the clerk gave me that look people give when they think you're making too much out of something small. But I just smiled and said, "Trust me, this won't stay small." 2 days later, a guy who'd seen the aftermath uploaded a video online, and suddenly my quiet little cookout disaster wasn't private anymore. The clip spread around town fast. People recognized her, recognized the park, recognized the hose, and once it hit social media, the city suddenly got real interested in the complaint they'd almost brushed aside. Police showed up at her house that weekend and handed her a citation for property damage and disturbing the peace. Most folks would have stopped there, called it justice gone back to life. I didn't. Because when the footage started circulating, people started digging, and what they found changed everything. Turns out she'd been calling the police on people for years, delivery drivers, teenagers, neighbors, real estate agents. And funny thing was, every suspicious person she'd reported seemed to share a certain shade of melanin. That's when I realized the grill wasn't the story, it was just the latest chapter. So I hired a civil rights attorney. We filed claims for destruction of property and emotional distress. And once the evidence stacked up, video, photos, call logs, her lawyer tried arguing she had a medical sensitivity to smoke, which sounded impressive until the judge asked why someone with a severe smoke condition would walk towards smoke instead of away from it. Case didn't make it to trial. Settlement came quick. I can't say the exact number, but let's just say my kids' college plans aren't hypothetical anymore. She had to attend mandatory training, complete community service, and issue a written apology. The city council even passed a regulation strengthening penalties for interfering with other park users, and people around town started calling it the Lewis Rule, which still feels strange to hear out loud. But the real twist wasn't the money or the ordinance, it was what happened to her. Once the video hit local news, her employer decided she wasn't the kind of face they wanted, representing their company values. She got fired. Her homeowners association voted her off the board. Neighbors stopped greeting her, and according to public records, her husband filed for divorce within the year. Meanwhile, I went back to that same park a month later, same grill, same spot, except this time I invited friends, coworkers, students, anybody who wanted a burger, and we lit the charcoal, smoke rolled up into the sky, kids laughed, music played, nobody complained. And I remember standing there flipping patties thinking how strange it is that sometimes winning doesn't look loud, sometimes it just looks like living your life anyway. But I still think about one thing. What if there hadn't been cameras? What if nobody filmed? What if it had just been her, word against mine? Would anyone have believed me, or would the story have ended with me apologizing for something I didn't do? That question sticks with me, and I want to hear what you think. Honestly, if you'd been standing where I was, hose spraying dinner, ruined kids, watching, would you have walked away like I did, or would you have fought back? And do you think the ending would have been the same? Tell me in the comments, because stories like this aren't really about grills or parks. They're about who gets heard, who gets doubted, and how fast the truth can change depending on who's holding the hose.